Arrival on Tartarus. Adam Porter, a seasoned explorer, stood at the edge of the landing craft as it breached the turbulent atmosphere of Tartarus, the galaxy's deadliest planet. Below, the surface roiled with violent storms, rivers of molten lava and jagged mountain ranges that seemed to claw at the sky. The air itself was a cocktail of toxins, lethal to any species that dared breathe it. Adam's team of pioneers had trained for this, but no amount of preparation could fully equip them for the reality of Tartarus. As the craft shuddered under the atmospheric pressure, Adam's voice cut through the comms. "Brace for impact! We're about to make history, people!" The craft slammed onto the rocky surface, the force jarring the team in their seats. They had arrived on a world that had devoured every other species that dared set foot on its cursed soil. But humans were different. They were tenacious, adaptable, and driven by a burning desire to conquer the unknown. From their orbital citadel, the Iconians, an ancient and powerful alien species, watched with a mix of curiosity and disdain. For millennia, they had ruled over the galaxy with an iron fist, subjugating countless species. To them, humans were just another primitive race, destined to perish on Tartarus like all the others. "Let's see how long they last," Commander Wyson sneered, his eyes narrowing as the humans began their first steps on the planet. But Adam and his team were not here to die. They were here to thrive. The first days were a blur of activity. The colonists erected reinforced shelters, constructed air filtration systems, and began the arduous task of terraforming the hostile environment. The poisonous air was filtered, the acidic rain was collected and purified, and the deadly predators that lurked in the shadows were systematically hunted down or driven away. But the greatest threat came not from the planet itself, but from above. The Iconians, threatened by the success of the human colony, launched a surprise assault. Adam and his people found themselves caught between a planet that wanted them dead and an alien empire that would stop at nothing to see them annihilated. "We're not just fighting for our lives," Adam declared to his team as they prepared for the onslaught. "We're fighting for humanity's place in the stars." As the first Iconian warships descended through the atmosphere, Adam knew this was only the beginning of a battle that would decide the future of worlds. The battle for survival. The Iconian assault was relentless. Plasma bolts rained down from the sky, carving molten scars into the tortured earth of Tartarus. The human colony, barely a week old, found itself under siege by an empire that had crushed civilizations for millennia. But the colonists were not without their own resources. Led by Jack Hawkins, the colony's most resourceful engineer, they had spent their first days on Tartarus constructing more than just shelters. They had built defenses, weapons, and most importantly, a shield generator that could withstand even the might of the Iconian war machine. "Get those shields up!" Jack shouted over the din of alarms as the first wave of enemy fire lit up the sky. "We're not going down without a fight." The Iconians had expected the humans to crumble under their onslaught, but instead, they found themselves facing a foe with a resilience they had never encountered. The humans fought back with a ferocity born of desperation and hope. They struck from fortified positions, using the treacherous terrain to their advantage, and employed tactics that the Iconians could not anticipate. As the battle raged, Adam received a transmission that changed everything. An Iconian voice, thick with urgency, crackled through the comms. "Commander Porter, I am Alara of the Iconian Progressives." "We must speak." Adam's eyes narrowed. An Iconian reaching out in the middle of a battle? It smelled like a trap. But the next words gave him pause. "There are those among us who oppose this war. We see your people's success here as a chance for change. I offer you valuable intel on Iconian weaknesses and battle plans, but I need your help in return." Adam's mind raced. Trust an Iconian defector? It was a gamble, but with his people dying by the minute, what choice did he have? "What's your price, Alara?" Adam growled, already dreading the answer. "Asylum for myself and my fellow progressives. Aid us and we aid you." Adam cursed under his breath. The colony was barely holding together, and now this. But the promise of inside information, of a chink in the Iconian armor, was too tempting to ignore. "All right, Alara, you've got a deal. Now what have you got for me?" The Iconian reply was swift. I'm sending you codes to access our flagship security systems. Use them to infiltrate the vessel, capture Commander Wyzen, and you could force a ceasefire. Adam's heart pounded. A desperate plan, but it might just work. He gathered his best fighters, a hand-picked squad of the toughest, meanest bastards the colony had to offer. Using Alara's stolen codes, they slipped aboard the Iconian flagship like ghosts, ready to change the tide of battle. Turning the tide. The Iconian flagship was a behemoth of steel and energy, bristling with weapons and defenses that could lay waste to entire planets. Adam and his team moved silently through its corridors, the codes provided by Alara allowing them to bypass security systems that would have otherwise incinerated them on the spot. But the enemy was waiting for them. Wyzen's elite guard, the best of the best, stood between Adam's team and their target. All hell broke loose as the two forces clashed in a whirlwind of steel, plasma, and fury. The corridors echoed with the sounds of battle as Adam and his fighters carved their way through the ship's defenses. They left a trail of broken bodies and sparking wreckage in their wake, but the closer they got to the bridge, the harder the resistance became. Wyzen's guards were relentless, their alien features twisted with a mixture of determination and fear. They knew that if Adam's team reached the commander, the entire Iconian assault could be undone. But Adam was not to be denied. He fought with the kind of ferocity that only a human fighting for the survival of their species could muster. His weapon was an extension of his will, and his will was unbreakable. Finally, they reached the bridge. The doors hissed open, and Adam found himself face to face with Commander Wyzen. The Iconian commander snarled, drawing his blade with a speed that defied the eye. Adam answered with a savage grin, his own weapon leaping into his hand. They clashed in a dance of death. Two warriors from two very different worlds, each fighting for the future of their people. The battle for Tartarus reached a fever pitch around them. The fate of the colony, the expedition, and two civilizations hung in the balance. And there, on the blood-soaked deck of an alien warship, Adam Porter and Commander Wyzen fought for the future of worlds. In the end, it was human tenacity that won the day. Wyzen fell, his alien features twisted in a grimace of pain and disbelief as Adam stood over him, blood dripping from a gash above his eye. "It's over," Adam growled, pressing his boot against Wyzen's chest. "Call off your attack, now!" Wyzen snarled. But Adam increased the pressure, his voice cold and unyielding. "Do it, or I'll broadcast every dirty secret your progressives told me across the galaxy." The Iconian's eyes widened with fear. With trembling hands, he activated his comm device. "All ships, stand down. Cease fire immediately." Adam watched the view screen as the Iconian fleet halted their assault. He tapped his own communicator. "This is Porter. We've got Wyzen. Hold positions and prepare for evac." Within hours, Adam and his team were back on Tartarus, their alien prisoner in tow. The colonists emerged from their shelters, blinking in the harsh light of their world. Smoke rose from craters where Iconian weapons had struck, but many of their reinforced structures still stood. Jack Hawkins approached, his face streaked with grime. "We lost the hydroponics bay and half our power grid, but we're still standing." Adam nodded grimly. "Get repair teams working around the clock. We need to be ready in case they come back." Days passed as the colony rebuilt. Adam spent hours interrogating Wyzen, probing for answers. The Iconian's arrogance slowly gave way to a grudging respect. "You don't understand," Wyzen said during one session. "Our empire has stood for millennia. We've seen species rise and fall. Your success here, it threatens everything." Adam leaned forward, his voice low and deadly. "You're afraid of change." Wyzen looked away, perhaps in shame, perhaps in realization. Perhaps the alliance word of the human victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Ships from a dozen alien races appeared in orbit, some offering trade, others seeking alliances. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy had seen an empire stumble, and it was humanity that had delivered the blow. Adam found himself thrust into the role of diplomat, navigating a minefield of competing interests. One day, a sleek vessel touched down outside the colony. Alara, leader of the Iconian progressives, stepped out with her followers. "We seek refuge," Alara said, bowing her head, "and we offer our knowledge in return." Adam studied the alien, remembering the crucial intel that had turned the tide of battle. He extended his hand. "Welcome to Tartarus." The progressives integrated quickly, sharing advanced technology that accelerated the colony's growth. They introduced new agricultural techniques, energy systems, and even medical advancements that began to change the very fabric of human life on Tartarus. But with each passing day, tension grew. Reports filtered in of Iconian warships gathering at the edge of the system. Adam stood atop the colony's new watchtower, gazing at the stars. The weight of leadership pressed down on him like never before. He had to protect his people, but he also saw an opportunity to reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. A young colonist approached, his voice trembling with barely contained fear. "Sir, we've detected more ships entering the system. They're not Iconian." Adam nodded, his lips pursed in thought. Whatever came next, humanity would face it head-on. They had conquered Tartarus itself. Now they would take their place among the stars. The stars above Tartarus twinkled like distant diamonds, and Adam knew that the future was theirs to shape. The galaxy would learn what it meant to challenge humanity, a species that not only survived the impossible, but thrived in it. A new enemy. The air crackled with tension as reports of incoming ships reached the command center. Adam's eyes narrowed as he stared at the tactical display. The readings were unlike anything they had encountered before. Whatever was coming, it wasn't Iconian, but it wasn't friendly either. Jack Hawkins was the first to break the silence. "Shields are holding at 82%, but these plasma bursts are like nothing we've seen before. We can't take this pounding forever." Outside, a nearby building erupted in a plume of fire and debris as one of the enemy's energy blasts found its mark. Adam flinched, then steeled himself. This was no time to lose focus. "Alter," Adam called out, turning to the Iconian progressive who had become an invaluable ally. "Any progress on cracking their communications?" Alter, hunched over a console, shook his head. "Negative. Their encryption is beyond anything in my experience. These Sith are formidable opponents." Adam nodded grimly. "Marcus, how soon can your strike team be ready? Give us 10 minutes. Marcus Trent's gruff voice replied over the comms. "We've adapted some of the old Iconian stealth tech. It might just get us aboard that flagship." As Marcus and his team prepared for their daring assault, Adam coordinated the city's defenses. Pulse cannons and interceptor drones engaged the Scythe fighters, filling the sky with streaks of weapons fire. The air crackled with ozone, and the acrid smell of burning metal permeated the atmosphere. Hours passed in a blur of tactical decisions and narrowly averted disasters. Then a triumphant shout came over the comms. "We did it!" Marcus exclaimed, his voice ragged with exhaustion. "Primary weapons array is down, but Adam, I took a hit. It's bad." Adam's heart sank, but he pushed the emotion aside. The battle wasn't over. With the scythe momentarily stalled, he seized the initiative. "All units, this is Porter. Prepare for immediate counterattack. We hit their forward base now while they're reeling." The surface of Tartarus had never truly recovered from the Iconian bioweapon. As Adam led his forces across the blasted landscape, writhing flora and crystalline formations created an alien obstacle course. Sith cyborg warriors emerged from their fortifications, their augmented limbs whirring as they opened fire. "Jack, now!" Adam shouted as they closed with the enemy. A series of electromagnetic pulses rippled across the battlefield. Sith warriors stumbled, their cybernetic enhancements temporarily offline. Human soldiers pressed the advantage, plasma rifles cutting through the suddenly vulnerable aliens. For a moment, victory seemed within reach. Then a bone-chilling screech split the air. From the scythe lines emerged monstrosities that defied description, part machine, part flesh, all nightmare. They tore through the human forces with terrifying speed and strength. "Fall back!" Adam roared, firing his rifle at a creature with too many limbs and not enough skin. "Back to the city perimeter. The retreat was costly." Adam watched good men and women fall to the scythe abominations, their screams haunting him as he directed the desperate fighting withdrawal. Finally, they reached the towering walls of New Tartarus City, the blast doors slamming shut behind the last stragglers. In the command center, Adam faced his battered leadership team. Jack nursed a nasty gash on his arm, while Alter's normally stoic features were drawn with worry. Options? Adam demanded, his voice tight with exhaustion. Jack cleared his throat. There might be one. The resonance chambers we found in the alien facility. If we can channel enough power. Adam nodded, understanding dawning. A weapon to take out their flagship. As they raced to bring the ancient technology online, the scythe monstrosities hurled themselves at the city walls. Adam watched from a security feed as the outer defenses began to buckle. "How much longer?" he shouted to Jack. "Almost there," Jack called back, his fingers flying over the controls. The feed showed a breach in the perimeter, scythe horrors pouring through. Adam's hand hovered over the evacuation alarm, knowing what activating it would mean. Then, with a sound like reality tearing, a brilliant beam of energy lanced from the heart of the city. It struck the Sith flagship dead center, punching through shields and armor alike. The massive vessel shuddered, its reactor going critical. Adam looked at the devastation around him, at the approaching wave of monsters, and at the ship that would soon become a miniature sun. He took a deep breath and hit the alarm. "This is Adam Porter to all citizens of New Tartarus City. Evacuate immediately. I repeat, evacuate immediately." As klaxons wailed and people streamed towards the emergency shelters, Adam turned to his team. "Let's move. We've got a lot of work to do." Exile Adam's fingers flew across the control panel, initiating the citywide evacuation protocol. Klaxons blared as his voice echoed through every comm channel. "All citizens, this is not a drill. Evacuate immediately to the underground shelters. I repeat, evacuate immediately." The Scythe flagship loomed overhead, its damaged hull pulsing with unstable energy. Adam watched the feeds as panicked colonists streamed towards the subterranean access points. Plasma bolts rained down, punctuating the chaos with explosions and screams. "Jack, status on the evac?" Adam barked into his comm. 70% clear, Jack's voice crackled back. "But we're running out of time." A violent tremor shook the command center. Adam stumbled, catching himself on a nearby console. Through the view screen, he saw the Scythe vessel's reactor core begin to rupture, tendrils of blinding energy arcing outward. "We need to go now," Adam shouted, sprinting for the exit. He and his team raced through the buckling corridors of New Tartarus City, dodging falling debris. They reached the main evacuation tunnel just as the world above them erupted in a cataclysm of light and sound. The shock wave hit like a hammer blow, sending them tumbling into the darkness. Adam's ears rang as he scrambled to his feet, urging the last stragglers deeper into the tunnel. Behind them, the access hatch groaned and twisted, sealing shut under the strain. For hours, they descended through winding passages, the sounds of destruction growing fainter. Finally, they emerged into a vast cavern where thousands of shell-shocked colonists huddled in the dim emergency lighting. Adam climbed atop a supply crate, addressing the crowd. "I know we've lost much today, but we're alive. And as long as we're alive, we have hope. We've survived in these tunnels before, and we'll do it again." A muffled boom shook dust from the cavern ceiling. All eyes turned upward as the reality of their situation sank in. New Tartarus City, their hard-won home, was gone. Grief and anger rippled through the assembled colonists. Adam saw fists clenching, tears flowing freely. He felt the weight of their loss, but knew they couldn't afford to wallow. "Jack," he called out, "pull up the old survey maps. We need to find defensible ground deeper in the network." As Jack worked, Adam organized teams to distribute supplies and tend to the wounded. Hours blended into days as they pushed further into unmapped tunnels. They encountered their first scythe patrol in a narrow passage. Adam's squad took point, their weapons cutting through the cyborg warriors with practiced efficiency. But each skirmish left them with fewer supplies and more wounded. After a week of grueling progress, Adam's scouts reported back with news that sent a surge of hope through the weary convoy. They'd found a massive grotto protected by natural stone formations and easily defensible choke points. As the colonists filed into their new sanctuary, Adam convened an emergency war council. Marcus Trent, his arm in a sling, joined them via holo projection. "What's the situation, topside?" Adam asked, his voice heavy with the weight of their circumstances. Marcus's hologram flickered. "Bad. The Scythe lost their flagship, but they're regrouping, and our long-range sensors show reinforcements inbound. We're looking at total annihilation unless we find a way to drive them off-world. Silence fell over the group. Adam's mind raced, considering and discarding options. Then he remembered the alien facility they had discovered during their first exile underground. "The resonance chambers," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "If we can amplify their output, trigger a planet-wide tectonic event." Jack's eyes widened as he grasped the implications. It would render the surface uninhabitable, force a scythe retreat, and trap us down here permanently. Adam nodded grimly. "I know it's an impossible choice, but it might be our only chance for survival." The council erupted into heated debate. Some argued for surrender, others for a suicidal last stand. Adam listened, weighing each option carefully. In the end, he made the call. "Prep the resonance chambers. We're going to burn our world to save our people." A new beginning, as Jack coordinated the activation sequence. Adam addressed the colonists one final time. He didn't sugarcoat the situation or offer false hope. Instead, he spoke of resilience, of the human spirit that had carried them this far. "Today, we choose exile to preserve our future," he said, his voice echoing through the cavern. "It won't be easy, but together, we'll forge a new path in the depths of Tartarus." With heavy hearts, they sealed themselves into the control room. Jack's fingers danced across the alien console, initiating the cataclysm that would reshape their world forever. The first tremors started small, a faint vibration through the stone. Then the quakes intensified, the very bedrock of Tartarus seeming to cry out in agony. Adam watched the sensor feeds as massive fissures tore across continents, swallowing Sith war machines whole. Hours passed, each tremor threatening to collapse their underground haven. When the shaking finally subsided, an eerie quiet settled over them. Adam stepped out of the control room, his legs unsteady. The air tasted stale, recyclers straining to compensate for the changed atmospheric conditions. He knew that above them, Tartarus had been transformed into an airless, irradiated wasteland. He turned to face his people, seeing the mix of fear and tenacity in their eyes. There would be no going back, no rescue from the stars. They had preserved their freedom, but at a terrible cost. "This is our home now," Adam said softly, gesturing to the vast cavern around them. "Our children will never see the sun, never feel wind on their faces, but they'll be free. And someday, generations from now, our descendants will find a way back to the stars." With those words, the survivors of Tartarus began the long, arduous task of building a new civilization in the lightless depths of their shattered world. Years crawled by in the lightless depths of Tartarus. The once grand cavern that had sheltered the survivors of New Tartarus City now bustled with the rhythms of subterranean life. Hydroponics farms glowed with artificial sunlight, their nutrient-rich waters nourishing rows of precious crops. Geothermal vents hissed and steamed, providing heat and power to the cramped living quarters carved into the rock. Adam Porter stood at the edge of a narrow walkway, surveying the hive of activity below. His face, once youthful, now bore the deep lines of a man who had shouldered impossible burdens. He watched as colonists scurried about their daily tasks, their eyes hollow but determined. A violent cough echoed through the cavern, followed by a series of wet hacking sounds. Adam's head snapped towards the source, his stomach clenching. "Another one," he muttered, his voice tight with urgency. "Jack!" Jack Hawkins appeared at his side, datapad in hand. "That's the third one this week," he muttered, punching in coordinates. "We need to move fast." They raced through winding tunnels, the air growing thick with fear and desperation. As they approached the quarantine sector, the sounds of panic grew louder. A small crowd had gathered outside a sealed habitat unit, their faces pale in the dim light. Adam pushed through, his heart pounding. Inside, a man writhed on the floor, his skin rippling and bulging as if something alive squirmed beneath it. Metal protrusions burst from his flesh, gleaming wickedly in the harsh light. "Get him to quarantine," Adam ordered, his voice steady despite the horror twisting his gut. "Now." As medics in sealed suits rushed to contain the afflicted colonist, Adam turned to Jack. We need answers, fast. They descended deeper into the alien facility, its ancient databanks humming with secrets. Adam's fingers flew across holographic interfaces, decoding encrypted files as Jack pored over sensor readings. "Adam," Jack called out, his voice wavering. "You need to see this." On the screen before them, grotesque images flickered to life. Sith scientists, their cybernetic bodies pulsing with alien technology, loomed over writhing test subjects. The footage showed organic matter being forcibly reshaped, assimilated into mechanical frameworks. "It's not just a virus," Jack whispered, his voice trembling. "It's evolution. Forced, accelerated evolution." Adam's fists clenched at his sides. "They're trying to turn us into them." A shadow fell across the console. Alter, the enigmatic Iconian ally, stepped forward. His otherworldly eyes gleamed with recognition and dread. "I've seen this before," he intoned, his voice carrying the weight of ancient wisdom. "A nanotech virus designed to rewrite organic matter at its most fundamental level. It seeks to create perfection." Adam's blood ran cold. Perfection? This is an abomination. As they raced to synthesize an antivirus, the cries of the afflicted echoed through the vents. Adam stood before a sealed bulkhead, listening to the inhuman sounds from within. Friends, family, all lost to this monstrous plague. With a heavy heart, he initiated the quarantine protocols. Massive doors slammed shut, sealing off entire sections of their underground home. The anguished wails of the damned faded to a muffled chorus of despair. Days blurred into weeks as Adam fought to hold the remnants of his people together. Whispers of dissent grew louder, questioning his harsh measures and the toll they were taking. In the command center, tensions finally boiled over. Jack confronted Adam, his eyes blazing with frustration. "We can't keep going like this," Jack shouted, his voice raw with emotion. "People are scared, Adam. They're losing hope." Adam whirled on him, years of pent-up rage and grief spilling out. "You think I don't know that? Every decision I make, every life I condemn, it haunts me. But what choice do we have?" "We survive," Jack argued, his voice softening. "That's all we can do." Adam's laugh was bitter, hollow. "Survive for what? So the Scythe can finish what they started? No, we end this. We find a way to wipe them out once and for all." Jack recoiled, shock etched across his features. "Genocide? Adam, listen to yourself." But Adam was beyond reason. He gestured wildly at the monitors showing the ravaged surface of Tartarus. "Look at what they've done to our world. There's nothing left up there but death. And down here, we're just delaying the inevitable." The confrontation was cut short by alarms blaring throughout the complex. A group of colonists, driven to desperation, had seized a weapons cache and were attempting to flee deeper into the unexplored tunnels. Chaos erupted in the cramped corridors as Adam's loyalists clashed with the would-be deserters. Plasma bolts seared the air, the acrid smell of ozone mixing with the coppery tang of blood. In the midst of the fray, Marcus Trent pushed through the crowd, his voice rising above the din. "Stop this madness! We're all that's left of humanity." A stray shot caught Marcus in the chest. He crumpled to the ground, crimson blooming across his tunic. Adam rushed to his side, cradling his old friend as life ebbed away. Marcus gripped Adam's arm, his eyes locked onto his leader's face. "Promise me," he gasped. "Don't let hate consume you. Be the man they need you to be." As Marcus's hand went limp, something inside Adam shattered. The weight of all he had lost, all he had sacrificed, threatened to crush him entirely. In the aftermath of the bloodshed, Adam stood before the surviving colonists. Their faces were gaunt, haunted by loss and fear. He felt the judgment in their stares, the wavering of their faith. "We can't stay here," he announced, his voice hoarse. "There's nothing left for us but ghosts and regrets. We push on, deeper into the unknown. We find a new beginning." Jack stepped forward, concern etched across his features. "Adam, we don't know what's down there. The risks are better than slowly dying here." Adam cut him off. He turned back to the crowd, seeing a flicker of hope rekindling in their eyes. "Who's with me?" One by one, hands raised. The faithful gathered supplies, readying themselves for a journey into the eternal night of Tartarus's depths. As Adam led them into the yawning darkness of unexplored tunnels, he felt the weight of Marcus's final words. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger. But deep in his heart, a small flame of hope refused to die.